All right, good morning. Welcome to the Tree Board webinar series, Advocating and Marketing Your Message. Today's presenter is Mr. Paul Johnson with the Texas A&M Forest Service. He is the Urban and Community Forestry Leader with the Texas A&M Forest Service. He is an International Society of Arboriculture board-certified Master Arborist and a Municipal Specialist, and he serves as a member of the ISA Board of Directors. Paul was raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and graduated from Oklahoma State University with a degree in forestry. Over the life of his career, he had been a radio talk show host, a newspaper columnist, an extension horticulturalist, university adjunct instructor, and plant health care specialist. Paul is a firm believer that trees are key to healthier, happier, safer communities. And with that, Paul, I will go ahead and hand it over to you. You should be good to go.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate the invite. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending upon your location. Happy to join you this morning. We're going to talk a little bit or a lot about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's selling the idea of trees. I really do believe trees are key to healthier, happier, safer communities. Many of us know that trees are good. I think most people, even those that are currently advocating to cut trees down, like trees. They just don't like that tree in that location sometimes. But unlike a lot of other commodities, we don't have a campaign for keeps the body good or the incredible edible or this, that, or the other. And so it is really incumbent upon us to activate ourselves and become that message leader. In terms of leadership, this quote really says everything that I believe about leadership. It's not a matter of what you say. It's a matter of what you do and what you can get other people to do. I do some work internationally, and I have some challenges with particularly my European friends because the idea of marketing or selling isn't thought of very well over there. And it often isn't here. You talk about a salesman, and a lot of people think about the used car salesman or somebody that's trying to sell you something that you don't need. But we are selling a product that everybody needs. And so it's really, I think, key that we do everything that we can to sell our product the best that we can. This is really what we're after. We want beautiful, well-treed, appropriately treed locations. I was at the ISA conference recently, and one of the key messages from one presenter was that trees are key for placemaking. If you go to a tropical location and there are palm trees, it feels like a tropical location. If you come to Central Texas and you're amongst the live oaks, it feels like you're in Central Texas, where so much of our world is now being homogenized, and you can find the same coffee, you can find the same hamburger, you can find the same all sorts of things in so many locations that trees are really one of those ways that we can set aside and make a place so much different than the place where people came from. And so I think it's really a matter of trying to integrate this with this. There's a lot of discussion right now, particularly with changes in administration and everything, about the terminology that we use. And we'll talk about this a little bit more. But urban may not sell really well in a more rural community. When people think urban, they think cities. They think New York, Los Angeles, Houston, the really big cities. And yet, over 80% of the U.S. lives within a community. And so we really have to figure out what terminology are we going to use. So let's talk about community, because if you look at definitions of community, there's several different definitions. So one is a group of people living in the same place, or a group of people having a particular characteristic in common. So we can understand that. The next one leads us a little bit more down the path that I think that we're all trying to work towards, which is that community is a feeling of fellowship with others. It's finding the things that we have in common, celebrating the differences, and not being separated by those. But if you look at the ecological definition, a community is a group of interdependent organisms of different species growing or living together in a specified habitat. About a year and a half ago, I participated in a focus group with just general public to talk about urban and community forestry, arboriculture, trees, and I was absolutely flabbergasted that no one in the group had ever heard the term urban forestry or urban forester. Not only were they not familiar with the term, they had never met anybody that was an urban forester. They were actually suspicious of that term. They said that it sounded like government doublespeak, that it was trying to greenwash what things do. And yet, what is a forest? A forest is a group of interdependent organisms of different species growing or living together in a specified habitat. Our community forests, our urban forests, are the trees and the birds and the animals and the roadways and the cars and the buildings and the utility lines and the people. It really all comes back to people. And so we've got to take a look at that, and how do you affect change with people? Unfortunately, facts don't always do that. If you start studying the way to affect change, if you really start looking at the theory and everything, everybody knows that smoking's bad for your health. And yet, lots and lots of people still smoke. The facts don't matter. It really comes down to feelings. And the way that we affect feelings is by building community. It's by working together. It's by building partnerships. So we've got to start looking beyond just ourselves. Tree people spend a lot of time talking to tree people. We don't necessarily spend a lot of time talking to doctors or talking to police chiefs or talking to all of these affiliated groups that can help us accomplish our goal, which is integrating trees and people. It's by working together that we can accomplish that goal. You may be at loggerheads with a group of builders in your community because they want to do the most economically, immediately feasible thing, which is clear out all the trees so that it's easier to build whatever it is that they're building. And then they're happy, usually, if they have to bring in some trees afterwards. But yet, we've got to work with them. Somehow, we have to find that bridge so that we can climb to the top of that mountain, which is having appropriate growth within our communities of people and trees. So let's next move into that next word that bothers some people, advocacy. There are, depending upon your location, who you're working with, there are some rules and regulations about lobbying and advocacy for some nonprofit groups, depending upon your designation. So always make sure that you go back to the law and make sure that you're doing things that you're allowed to do. But ultimately, advocacy is just public support of a particular cause or policy. There is nothing negative about advocating for trees. We should all be tree advocates. Any of us that have the facts, again, remember, facts may not affect change, but facts bolster what you're trying to communicate. You can utilize facts surgically in order to help support the argument that you're making. And those of us that know that trees are key must advocate for appropriate regulations, management, care, all of those things. I was shocked one day, got a call from this guy over and over and over again. We've got over 20 million people in the state of Texas, and there's only 10 of us in our urban and community forestry program, so we don't do a lot of individual property visits. But this guy was just absolutely insistent, and so we ended up going out to take a look at that tree. It was a beautiful live oak tree, not super, super big, but definitely mature. And he had this great story about how he bought the lot before he built the house. He made them replat the lot in order to have the entire trunk of the tree. He really, really pushed over and over again how he spent $40,000 extra in order to own all of the trunk of his tree because it would have been on the property line otherwise. So I was getting really excited, like, this is a great day, and then asked him, oh, who do you have help you care for your tree? What professional, what certified arborist are you working with? And he pulled his money clip out of his pocket and said, oh, I just wait till somebody's doing work down the street and I walk up with two $100 bills and ask them if they would be willing to prune my tree. I was absolutely flabbergasted. Here's somebody that even though he saw the value of the tree, at least $40,000 worth of value in that tree, he didn't see the value in having proper care for that tree. I think it reminds us that our job is never done when it comes to advocating. Well, advocacy really comes from 3 E's. The first is engage. So we have to engage our audience. Then we have to educate them. I think a mistake that many groups make that I see over and over and over again is everybody wants to concentrate on education, but you got to get people to show up for the education before it matters whether you educate or not. So you have to engage them. Once you get them engaged, once you get them interested, then you can educate them. You can give them the facts that they need. You can help them better understand. But they got to be interested first. And then once you've got them interested, once you've got them the appropriate education for that next step, then we have to encourage them. We have to activate them. We've got to get them to go out and help us. So the 3 E's: engage, educate, encourage. We're really going to concentrate on the engage, move into the educate, and then we'll talk about the encourage just a little bit at the end. As always, I've got a lot more to say than I have time, so I've tried to peel this down a little bit and focus in for you. But it really is that sweet spot in the middle when you have an engaged, educated population that's active in working with us. That's the Holy Grail. That's what we're looking for. So let's talk about that engagement. It's really marketing. It's that selling side, and don't let that turn you off. I've done everything from telemarketing, which I'm not particularly proud of some of the things that I did when I was doing telemarketing, to actually selling tree care. And I think one of the great things for us is we have an amazing product to sell, and rarely are we asking for dollars for us when we're selling it. We may need help for the organization that we work with. We may need dollars from the community that we're working with in order to accomplish those goals, but it's not about personal enrichment. It's about public enrichment. And so it takes that idea of selling and I think really gives it a positive spin, because it's vital that we have those people that care with us. Of course, one of the best things you can do is break bread with another group. Meeting in person, going to all of the local garden clubs, going and meeting with the civic groups, finding those people, the master gardeners, those that are natural allies going and meeting with them, engaging with them, having a meal with them, adult drinks, whatever works in your area, and helping to build that relationship is really a good step towards getting the community behind us. But we can't be limited to that. This is a brand new world. 2017 is really, even though we're a couple of decades into the internet, we are on the cusp of even more change, and we've got to be willing to change and help lead towards engaging with people in many ways. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about messaging, then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about tools. Target audience, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with. You know better who your target audience is, or if you don't, you as a group need to get together and figure out, is your target audience the mayor, the city council, the city manager, the decision makers in your area? Is it your state legislature? Who are you trying to influence? And then we start talking about, okay, what message do we want to use and what are the proper tools for it? So we'll concentrate on those two today. If you haven't read any of the books by Chip and Dan Heath, I strongly recommend them. Made to Stick is one of those that I go back to over and over and over again. The idea is that there's so much information out there. I mean, you can follow down a rabbit warren, chasing information from one subject to another through the internet, and there's just so much bombarding us all of the time that we have to have short, sweet, easy to remember ideas, which is why I picked Trees Are Key for the name of the podcast that we do. We'll talk about that one a little bit more later on too. But Trees Are Key is one of those easy to remember ideas. Now, some of you may have heard others. Trees are the answer. Trees are the key. But words matter. We'll talk about why words matter a little bit more. But I dropped the word "the" when I was deciding what our campaign in Texas was going to look like, because trees are not the answer to domestic violence. Now, we do have research that shows domestic violence is lower for people that can see trees from their living space. But if you go out and talk with a group that works with domestic violence survivors, and you say, trees are the key to solving your problems, they're going to shut down. They're not going to listen, because it's not the key, but it can be a key to making a difference. So let's pay attention to language as we're working through things. Another campaign that I really like is Trees Work out of Missouri. There's a lot of great examples out there. Invest from the Ground Up in California. There's lots of, maybe in some cases, too many resources out there for us, because we really do have to narrow in. Research shows that the typical audience is going to remember 1 to 3 things that you say. Doesn't matter if you say 3 things or 50 things, they're only going to remember 1 to 3 of them. And so we have to make sure that we're helping them remember the most important ones, whatever those are for what you're trying to accomplish. This is on the handout, so you don't have to write all of this down, but there's a great presentation online through SlideShare about speaking for trees and language, and we often talk to ourselves in our own language. And then we have a hard time when we start going out and talking to other groups. If you're going and speaking to a group of police chiefs about ecosystem services, they're probably not going to understand what ecosystem services are. We already mentioned the fact that the term urban forest is really challenging for a lot of audiences. So we need to make sure that we're adjusting the way that we say what we're saying in order to make it applicable to them. So if you're going to go out and talk to a bunch of doctors, make sure that you're talking in words that the doctors will understand, not in the words that arborists or foresters would understand. So check out that resource. Fairly new is the Vibrant Cities Lab. So the Vibrant Cities has started a number of years ago, part of a process for another group that is in the resources at the end, our Sustainable Urban Forest Coalition. But these are groups that have gotten together and are really trying to work on helping us create messages, giving us the resources to show people the impact. If you're going to go out and talk to a bunch of police chiefs, then you might want to know how trees improve public safety. If you're going to go out and talk to a bunch of doctors or nurses, then maybe you want to know how trees improve public health. In many cases, the work that I've done, the Economic Development Corporation in a small community may be one of the best allies that you can find, because there's so much great research that shows that trees have a huge economic impact on communities. Well, here are some resources, vibrantcitieslabs.com, that you can use to get some of that information and not have to do a lot of your own research and try to delve through to figure out which one's the best to use. My message that I've settled on that we're using here in Texas is trees are key. The state foresters have worked on My Tree, Our Forest. And across the South, we have a southern group of state foresters, and our Urban and Community Forestry Committee is really working this year on trying to help people understand that healthy trees equals healthy lives. Well, what's all this hashtag stuff? I don't know how many of you are active on social media, but as a tool, social media can be a very valuable tool for us to use to both engage and educate. So let's talk about why real quickly, guys. I know a lot of people are pretty resistant, and yet, if any of you have participated in the Municipal Forestry Institute, you have to be where the people are when the people are there. People are on social media. If they're there, we have to be there. 1.3 billion plus users on Facebook. You can read through all of that, and some of this is a little bit older information. Some of those numbers have gone up, some of them have gone down, and yet that's why we have to be there. If the big companies that are making lots of profits are there, that's a pretty good indication that it's a good investment. So we need to also invest. I think a lot of people have started to get into the internet and social media a little bit because the cost is low, or at least the, I'll put cost in air quotes because the dollar outlay might be low, but it could take a fair bit of time. So I'm going to go through some of the tools and the sites that I use and some of the ways that we work with social media, and then also share a couple of tools that might make it a little bit easier for you. But this really is all about hitting that spot in between engaging an audience and educating them. You've got to make sure that it's not just one or the other. You've got to have some what I like to call edutainment, some educational entertainment. It's got to be enjoyable, and the big word that I think many of us forget when we talk about social media is the word social. Social media is not a broadcast medium. It is not TV. It is not radio. Oh, and if you've watched TV recently or listened to the radio, they're trying to better engage their audiences, and how do they do that? Through social media. It's really, I think, very clear to me, and I hope that it is to you, and soon we'll be able to get past that need to sell social media and can just concentrate on the how rather than the why. But this is a screenshot from my phone. I use quite a bit of social media. I think it's very effective and a good use of time. So let's just look at a few of these. Facebook, being where the majority of people are, is one that I think that we need to engage in. However, it's getting tougher and tougher to actually reach audiences on Facebook. But I'm involved in one way or another with several different initiatives on Facebook, and I'm able to work with each of these. So we've got Alamo Forest Partnership is a regional urban forestry council in the San Antonio area. In the Austin area, we have the Austin Area Tree Huggers Happy Hour. It happened just last night, but once a month we organize a meetup at one of our local establishments, usually soon after work, enjoy some adult beverages, some conversation, some good food, and just reconnect with other people that care about trees in the Austin area. Our ISA Texas, which is our Texas chapter of the International Society of Arboriculture, has a page that I helped them start, the San Antonio Arborist Association, and then the page for our podcast here at the Forest Service, Trees Are Key. And each one of those has different audiences, different reaches, and so you can manage all of them fairly readily just from your phone. Trees Are Key, the podcast, as I talked about, we can update it easily. Photos are very, very powerful. Video is becoming very important. And with Facebook in particular, also probably Instagram, live video really seems to be, it's being pushed by the companies themselves. And so if you're doing a tree planting event and you do a live video stream of the tree planting, other people out there on Facebook are more likely to see you because you're doing live video. So that's one that you probably want to look at quite a bit. Every week when we put up the new podcast, we post it on both our agency website and this Trees Are Key Facebook page, and get quite a few people to see what we're doing. And the more people that see it, the more likely they are to click through and actually listen to one of the episodes and learn a little bit. So it's a matter of that engaging with them and educating with them. You don't have to do it all yourself. Each one of these pages has a group of people that can help. So you can assign, maybe you've got some volunteers that are pretty comfortable with social media. Maybe you've got some younger people that are wanting to get involved, but they're not able to come and volunteer during the day because they're working. Once you develop that relationship with them, then you can assign them roles, and you can have a different person each day of the week monitor your Facebook page, post something, interact with the people that are engaging with you, kind of share that burden. The whole idea, just like when we're planting trees, many hands make light work. You don't have to spend all of your time working on this just by yourself. After Facebook, Twitter is another one. There were some thoughts that Twitter might go away, but we've certainly not seen the numbers dip on Twitter. TV in particular is really picking up on it, radio, our president. There's a lot of people really engaged on Twitter, so it's a good one to be there. And it's a fairly quick and easy way. They've made the tools easier. Don't have to worry as much about word count and some things like that. If people are interested, we could do a social media tutorial at some time in the future. But engaging with the audience there it's really great, and it's a good way to stay connected to other people. Every other week we do a tree chat, hashtag TREECHAT. It's the second and fourth Tuesday of each month now, and we've got a whole group of tree interested people from all over the globe that get together this 1 hour a week. We usually have a topic that we talk about, so there's some engagement, there's some community building, there's some education that happens, and a lot of interaction. It's a great way. Hope you join us sometime. But you can also create lists so that you're only looking at the tweets from a certain group of people. These are the foresters on my team. All of my foresters have Twitter accounts, and they all occasionally share something that they're doing. We had one recently where we're taking down our emerald ash borer traps to see if emerald ash borer has spread in the state of Texas. It's a great way because I get monthly reports from them, but it's always at the beginning of the next month. So if in the middle of the month somebody asks, oh, what's your team been working on? I may not know very well. But through Twitter, not only within a few short words do I have an idea of what they've been doing, there's usually a picture attached. And so I can easily share that of, oh, wow, look at this amazing project that we're working on, or take a look at this picture and look at all of these kids that are looking at this tree, helping plant this tree. Look at all those big grins. It's a great way to share what people are doing. We'll get past that. Let's move on to Instagram. Instagram is one, if you haven't played with it yet, I strongly encourage it. A lot of younger people have really moved away from Facebook because Facebook became the place where all of the older people were congregating, and so they were looking at something new. In this presentation, we're not going to get into Snapchat. I'm not overly active in Snapchat, but that one's also just growing by leaps and bounds. But Instagram is great because it is photo-based. It is image-oriented. And people are really active on Instagram. The people that are grammars really interact with people a lot. They will like your picture. You'll get a lot more interaction there than you probably will on Twitter. And when you're getting interaction, not only does it make you feel good, there's an endorphin release when something you've done has been successful, but the more people that interact, the more likely other people are to see it. Because all of these organizations, all of these apps have ways to kind of promote that which is the most popular and have a tendency to kind of push that that's less popular away, which is one of the reasons why we need more of you active on social media, is that algorithm can help us spread the word. If you're engaging and you're liking what I tweet and I like what you tweet or post on Instagram, then it's much more likely other people are going to see it too. There's a lot of education. I've seen arborists from up north interact with arborists from the Phoenix area about pruning palm trees because a lot of young arborists want to move around. They want to work on trees in the Pacific Northwest and get into those really, really big, tall trees. But then they also want to move south and work with palm trees and get a wide variety of experience. And so they're learning from their peers through something like Instagram. And yet they're not always learning the right thing. Often they are learning the wrong way to do something because the person that's sharing doesn't necessarily know what they're doing. So by engaging there, we're able to help correct some of that misinformation. We'll talk about another site here in just a little bit that's got lots of misinformation on it. LinkedIn, very quickly, LinkedIn is a little bit more of the professional level, networking, less family and friends, more peers and coworkers. But it's also a very strong social network. A lot of people are using it, so it's one to look at. The one I think that we as tree people have really failed the most in to this point is YouTube. And I am just as guilty as anybody else. As you heard in the introduction, I did radio for a number of years. I've been told I've got a face for radio, and video is just more challenging, but it's one that we have to go to. The number one site for self-helpers is YouTube. If somebody needs to know how to fix the knob on their door, if somebody needs to know how to fix a leak in a sink or a bathtub, I go to YouTube to find out how to do it. Well, if you do a search for tree pruning in YouTube, you don't get very many good resources in the first couple of pages. You get those that are funny, you get those that are scary, but you don't get good, proper pruning technique. I did a TEDx talk for trees. It's on YouTube, and so there's a few people out there. Tree Care Industry Association has really started to engage more on YouTube and has some good videos out. ISA's doing more and more video all the time, really kind of focusing in on the engagement and starting to move into the education side of things. But each of you that are on here need to get involved. Get on YouTube, find the good information, make sure that you're liking it, making sure that you're sharing it, because the more people that interact with it, again, that algorithm, the more other people are going to see it. Google Plus has not fared very well, and yet they're still one of the top search engines, and so a little bit of engagement on Google Plus is not time wasted. I don't spend a lot of time there now, but I do some and help create this tree care and arboriculture community on Google Plus that's now over 1,000 members across the world, particularly in other countries. They're still using it quite a bit, and there's the potential that it might help you show up higher on search engine results. Pinterest. Many of you may have spent some time on Pinterest at one point or another. It's a great place for finding recipes and all sorts of things like that. There's no reason why we can't utilize that to help share great tree information too. And then in terms of tools, because this can be a challenge time-wise. A lot of people spend a lot of time doing social media. You can hire somebody to do it for you, but we don't always have those resources, and so we need to be able to do some things ourselves. Hootsuite and Buffer, B-U-F-F-E-R, are two tools that I use to be able to concentrate my social media in little blocks of time throughout the week rather than having to do it all of the time. Hootsuite, it's a dashboard. It's just a way to interact with multiple sites, and so you can use it personally, you can use it professionally, and you can actually look at all of your different streams through there. You can find what somebody's doing, because a big part of social media is sharing other people's good information. I took the tweet about this webinar and I shared it, added a little bit to it to see if we could expand our audience for today a little bit. That's one of the things that this is really great for. If you're just using the Twitter app and you sit down and you find 10 things that you want to retweet and you hit retweet on all of those right away, they all go out immediately. That's better than not doing it at all. But with a tool like Hootsuite or with Buffer, you can actually retweet those with a delay. And so they're actually spread out throughout the day. And it makes it look like you're more active on social media than you actually are. Make sure that you have your notifications turned on, so if somebody is responding to you, if they're asking a question, something like that, that you can respond to them fairly quickly. It's amazing. As time goes on, we seem to be getting shorter and shorter attention spans, and one of the measures that the algorithms use is how quickly do you respond to things, how active are you on that site. But it really is a great way to engage with people. It's a great way to maintain friendships from real life. It's also a great way to build friendships virtually that you may then meet each other at a future conference or something. I've had that happen quite a bit. But you can retweet it, you can edit it to retweet it, lots of different ways to interact with this. And so I'm just really selling the concept of, not the actual process today. But then you can choose which of your networks this goes out to. You can get a handful for free, so it's one of those tools that you can do at no dollar cost. Or if you do it a lot, or if you have a lot of different roles that you play, you can pay for a little bit more access and be able to share to more sites, share more things at a time, those kinds of things. But it's a great way to help get some information out there. You don't even have to pick what time it goes out if you don't want to. They've got some algorithms to try to put it out at the best time of day. And then you hit schedule, and it schedules all of these and then sends it out. So I had things going out every few hours back on March 10th. Okay, so we've talked about the engage, talked a little bit about the educate. Now let's talk a little bit about encouraging or activating our audience, our group. And sometimes this is ourselves as well as the other people that we're working with, our partners. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And really, that activating our group is the starting line. All of that engagement, all of that education, that's how we have prepared for the race of actually making a difference. We're here to change the world, and it takes our partners, it takes our network, it takes the people that we're working with to accomplish that. Well, usually the biggest thing that we forget to do, we forget to ask them to help. So the biggest key to engaging, educating, and then activating our group is just to ask. That encouragement to go out, give them an action, make it easy. If you want people to call your local city council, make sure that you've got the names, you've got the numbers, you've got the email addresses, you've got the mailing address. If you want something handwritten, make it as easy as possible for them to make a difference. We're all busy. There's lots and lots of people out there asking us to do things. I often say we're competing against cancer, starving kids, homeless puppies, you name it. We've got so many other interests out there that we have to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to get just our little bit of people's attention. And the biggest thing, make it easy for them. If you make it easy for them, you ask them to do it, and then a little repetition doesn't hurt. Kind of like with social media, I know a lot of people that only send out a post once. Well, the research shows that 7 or 8 times is usually the sweet spot. Every time you send it out, you get a few more people, and eventually that kind of peters off a little bit. But if you ask once and nobody does anything, what do you have to do? You just have to ask again. It's kind of the basis of volunteer management. Most people don't volunteer because they've never been asked to volunteer. Many of you may have been that person at one point where not only did you not wait to be asked, but you just kept hammering on the door saying, let me help you, let me help you, let me help you. But not everybody's like that. A lot of people are willing to help. A lot of people want to help, but they're not going to beat you up and make you let them help. So go out there, change the world, engage with your audiences, educate them on those messages that you're trying to communicate, and then encourage them to actually do something. It's that action item. And remember, leadership, lead by example. If you haven't done it, you probably shouldn't ask everybody else to. So get out there, make a difference, and let's make sure that we are doing what we need to do. Hey, this worked out timing-wise. We've actually got some time for some questions. I love the Lorax. I really think it says an awful lot to all of us. There's a QR code there that'll lead you to the podcast that I do. You can reach out through social media at Treevangelist on all of the platforms, and of course, email works. We haven't talked about it, but if you don't have an email list that you're keeping and utilizing to communicate with your partners and community, you probably should. All right.
All right, great.
That's what I have, Leslie. You bet.
Excellent. I like it. I'll leave his contact information up there for a little bit so you guys can take note of that while we kind of close it out. So now we do have about 10 or 12 minutes on the call to allow for some questions. So if you guys have any questions, please go to the Q&A dialog box on the top left of your computer screen and just type in your questions, and I'll bring Paul's attention to it, read it out, and give him a little bit of time to answer the questions. Hopefully we'll get a couple from the attendees, because I think you presented a lot of really useful information. We have had this topic come up in previous years' webinar series, advocacy and stuff like that, but this is kind of a slightly different approach as far as the past ones have mainly focused on engaging the decision makers and policy makers, so your city council, your mayors, your state legislature, those kind of folks. So this is another avenue that we as tree boards or municipal arborists or urban foresters have to reach out to make contact with our community and our towns to kind of get urban forestry out there. So I really appreciated that. So certainly,
really one of the best ways to get decision makers to care is to have a lot of voters say that they care. That's why I'm really advocating kind of a broader reach, is because if they get 20 or 30 phone calls, emails, or handwritten letters about a subject, they're going to pay a lot more attention than if it's, quote unquote, just the tree board that's reaching out to try to get something changed. So it really is an important way to engage in the process.
Right, and the more times you put information out there to the general public or to the policymakers, not necessarily with an ask or a complaint or anything like that, just as far as educating them on what urban forestry is and what arboriculture is, the better response you might get when you do have an issue come up or you do need to ask for some help from one of those policymakers. So,
yes.
But we do have one question that came in. We do have an individual on the call who is calling herself out as technologically challenged, and she wants to know how she can find out how to use some of those apps, and if there's a YouTube video on how to use each one that you might be able to direct people to.
Well, probably the best way is to find somebody under 20 years old. If you're working with a nonprofit group or you've got a tree board, finding somebody that has a kid is the best way to figure out, because they will be able to take you through. Now, some of them are a little bit fast, so that's why I go all the way up to 20, is usually those in that 18 to maybe 24-year-old range probably aren't quite as adept as our 13-year-olds. Our 13-year-olds, they seem to have 12 thumbs and can type with all of them at the same time. But the rest of them are really good at helping you get started. This is one of the things that Josh Bohonic with Davy Resource Group is another tree-oriented social media person, or a social media-oriented tree person is probably a better way to put it. And we're actually talking about having some meetups at conferences like the Partners in Community Forestry that Arbor Day Foundation does in Tulsa this year, and maybe do some meetups at ISA to actually stand there with people and help them get started in social media. We spend a lot of time saying that you should, and there aren't any great resources that I know of anyway on how to start. But the best thing is pick one and just start playing with it a little bit.
Okay.
Pretty effective.
Yeah, great advice there. All right, and the next question is, what types of content and messages do your audiences particularly respond to? do you find that they respond best to a certain type of story or image?
The most popular or the most interacted with social media message that I've ever sent out was on National Arbor Day this year. National Arbor Day was also National Superheroes Day. And I put out a quick tweet that I'm always trying to look for whatever's trending that day to glom onto it, and did a tweet about trees being superheroes because they capture the energy from the sun and turn it into sugar and turn air into wood. Put a little GIF attached to it, and it went not quite viral, but as viral as anything that I've ever done. Honestly, your audience has everything to do with what message is going to sell the best. If you're going to try to work with a group of builders, then you need to make sure that you're sharing the messages about trees increasing property value, and sharing the message about how to work around trees and do it efficiently and effectively, particularly cost effectively. If you're dealing with a group of doctors, there's becoming more and more information about health. And so finding out what's important to the person or the people that you're talking to will really help you pick which of the many messages that we have that will be effective.
Mm-hmm. And Arbor Day celebrations are the easiest way to kind of jumpstart those kind of efforts, because it's a very happy, positive, community engaging event. So if you haven't done social media in the past, or you haven't reached out to your policymakers, that is your good first step. Between now and your Arbor Day, you can start kind of working those messages and figuring out a game plan for it. But that's the easiest way to get started on anything, I would think. That's my opinion.
I think that it is an important one. It's really one of those times. However, I will say that I think, unfortunately, Arbor Day has lost out to Earth Day in many ways, because Arbor Day Foundation encourages communities, states, everyone to celebrate when it's best for them.
Right.
Well, that means that here in Texas, we celebrate Arbor Day the first Friday in November, because it's the beginning of the planting season, where the end of April is after our prime planting season.
Right.
So we've diluted that message a little bit, particularly when you start talking about some of the broader reach of social media. But locally, any local celebration, anything that can help raise the issue. Here in Texas, we've had a lot of attention paid to our trees because the legislature and the governor are very interested in tree ordinances. And so it's given us the opportunity to talk about trees in a different way than we have otherwise. It's one of the things, particularly any organization that works with disaster relief or preparedness, response, those kinds of things, it's a little bit tough to accept, but the concept of never waste a good disaster.
Right.
If some out-of-state builder comes in and cuts down a bunch of big trees at a busy intersection in order to build whatever big box store is coming in, and your community doesn't have an ordinance, and people get upset because they see all of those big trees lying there over a long weekend, that's an opportunity to raise the issue of trees. It's the opportunity to talk about how to manage a community's forest, and ordinances are one of the ways that we have. It's one of those tools in the toolkit, and it gives us that opportunity. So if it's a fire, if it's a tornado, there's a lot of things that can affect our trees, and we've got to be prepared for when they come in so that we can get those proper messages out quickly and effectively.
And that kind of rolls us into the next question, talk about ordinances. We have another question that came in saying, how should we handle political considerations that come into play regarding municipal tree issues? For example, the billboard industry or developers. I guess that kind of falls into the ordinance and political issue there. If you want to take that one, Paul.
Certainly. I think that is the strongest argument for tree boards. Depending upon how they're set up, and different places set them up different ways, but often tree boards, each person is nominated either by the mayor or by a city council person, and that should help you have a little bit more access than the general public does. If a city council person has invited you, nominated you to serve on the tree board, then you need to build a relationship with that person and help them. So it's part of that engagement of making sure that they come to you when a tree issue comes up, that you're one of those trusted sources to find out what's going on. And so yes, there's lots of politics involved. If you go in and the builders are talking, or this is from personal experience, if they've got stickers that say trees and houses, or trees and homes, trees and businesses, make sure that you insist that they give you a sticker too. Because we're not against everything that they're doing. We want growth. We want homes for our families. We just want to do it in a balanced way where we can have both growth of trees and growth of our community.
All right, good suggestions. All right, next question. We have a couple more questions.
Okay.
Where do you get the time necessary to be engaged on so many different social media platforms?
My family would probably say I get it from them. Honestly, I've got amazing support both from my organization and my family. I probably spend, it's been a little bit less lately, but I probably spend in the range of an hour or two a day working on social media in one way or another, and then another 4 hours each week working on the podcast. So it's just a matter of figuring out what is the biggest bang for your buck and making sure that you're doing what needs to be done and also what you want to do. So different people put different amounts into it.
And as you get comfortable with each of the different platforms, it takes less and less time. You learn little tricks and stuff like that. So it's not all encompassing of your day, but you do need to set aside a certain amount of time each day. That's a really smart way to handle it.
Yeah, just like people said the same thing about email when email first came out. Oh my gosh, why can't somebody just send me a fax? Before it was a fax, why can't somebody just send me a letter? It's the same idea. We sit down, we often open up our email first thing in the day and deal with those. If you take a part of that time that you were doing for email and put it towards social media, you can accomplish very similar things and do it in a controlled manner so that it doesn't take over your time.
All right, and one last question that I've got here for now. It says, our tree board has its own Twitter and Instagram account. However, it seems the majority of our followers aren't town residents. Which is the audience we need to target? Any advice for generating more local followers?
Absolutely. Go to all of your local events, do a tree adoption, and so rather than call them giveaways, where I work, we always call them adoptions because it's a lot more like taking home a puppy than it is getting a free taco or something like that. It's a living entity that you've got to care for. So we do tree adoptions, make sure that everybody that's adopting the tree is invited to like your Facebook page, follow you on Twitter, do a contest, find somebody to sponsor a bigger tree, and have everybody that is at the event join your Facebook page or your Twitter, follow your Twitter account, and then pull a winner out and give them a nice big tree at the end of the day or a book on trees. There's lots of different ways that you can do some local contests and encourage more adoption from your local groups. look for any of those organizations that are kind of helping people with technology. Often local libraries will do things on helping people with social media. Go in and help more people get active in it and become valuable to them as a resource.
Okay, all great ideas. All right, well, I don't see any other questions coming in. So you'll notice, everybody that's on the call, that I put up the code, the ISA Education Credit Code. If you download the form that I attached as a handout, you would just put this code down there, and then you mail that back to ISA. And as I said, we are planning our 2018 webinar series now. We should have some dates and topics selected by the end of 2017. We'll start announcing those late fall, early winter. And if you've registered for any of our webinars, you're on our contact list, so you should get notified for those. But you can keep checking our website, which is also listed there. And with that, I really appreciate your time, Paul, and I hopefully everybody on the webinar found your information useful. I did. I took lots of notes. So I really appreciate you helping us out with this. And with that, everybody, thank you for attending, and have a wonderful day.
Happy to help, and I'll point out to everybody that I do have some additional links at the end of the presentation. So if you download the handout from the upper right, the very last slide has additional resources with links to quite a few great places to go. Here, we'll show it real quick. Ah, there. Oh. There it is. So all of those are in the handout.
Okay, great. All right, excellent. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you guys on our 2018 webinar series.